On the 29th of July, 2001, hundreds of people gathered in Medina County, Ohio, on the eve of one of the biggest events of the year, the Medina County Fair. There were stalls, rides, livestock displays, and attractions, and in one particular corner, a series of huge and lovingly restored antique steam tractors were on display. One such tractor, however, was about to turn this calm and ordinary day into the most deadly in the long history of the fair. The city of Medina was founded in 1812 as an area of agriculture roughly 53 kilometers or 33 miles southwest of Cleveland. Medina and the county that it sits in were named after a historic city in Saudi Arabia. By 2000, the city's population was around 25,000, with many of the residents working in Cleveland's metropolitan area. In 1845, a permanent organization was established that would become known as the Medina County Fair. Here, farmers and other locals would gather to show off their prized livestock and harvest. From 1945 to 2001, the fair was hosted every year, except in 1952 when it was cancelled due to an outbreak of polio. Over the years, more and more concession stalls and vendors became integral parts of the event. Among those who regularly contributed through the 1990s was Cliff Kovacic. A father of three and owner of a local business, Cliff was seen as a very supportive, helpful, and well-liked member of the community. Along with his son, William Bill Kovacic, and several close friends of his, he shared a passion for agricultural equipment, and especially for steam tractors. In August of 1997, Cliff bought an antique Case 110 tractor, originally built in between 1908 and 1909, from a man named Clarence Christian Jr. Clarence had acquired the tractor in 1993 from an auction in Minnesota and brought it to Ohio to have it repaired. However, while it was disassembled for repair, Clarence sold the steam tractor to Cliff on an as-is basis. This Case 110 measured 6.4 meters or 21 feet long and 3 meters or 10 feet wide, with the traction wheels at the rear. It weighed over 15,000 kilograms or over 17 tons when empty, and could hold just under 900 kilograms or 2,000 pounds of coal and 1,285 liters or 366 gallons of water. Altogether, it was capable of producing 110 horsepower, hence the 110 designation. Cliff and his son Bill spent over 2 years restoring the tractor to operational status. As someone who had contributed to the county fair in previous years, Cliff, along with his son and friends, decided to bring the 110 to the 2001 fair. Earlier that year, he, his son Bill, and 46-year-old friend Alan Kimball ran the tractor and found no issues with it. On Sunday the 29th of July 2001, the county fair was getting ready to open its doors to attendees the following day. At around 5:40 p.m., Cliff, Bill, and Alan Kimball, along with 58-year-old friend Dennis Youngbloot, drove the tractor to the fairground. This was a straight shot to the fair entrance along West Smith Road. Along the way, 2 police officers, Dave Soyka and Christopher Conwell, were riding in a squad car when they noticed the tractor and proceeded to tail it to the fair. Cliff was operating the steam tractor in an unauthorized area, that being a paved road, and the 2 officers intended to issue a ticket. Once the tractor entered the fairgrounds at around 6:15 p.m., the officers managed to pull over the tractor near an admission booth and issued Cliff a ticket. The rest of Cliff's family was nearby. When one of the officers asked Cliff why he didn't bring the tractor on a trailer, his daughter said that the tractor was too big for any of their trailers. As this was going on, the tractor was reversed into a parking spot alongside the other steam tractors already on display. Then, without warning, it exploded. The steam tractor was blown 3.6 meters or 12 feet into the air before landing on its left side. At the same time, the explosion shot hot steam, shrapnel, and heated lubricating oil up to 90 meters or 100 yards in all directions. The explosion instantly claimed the lives of all 4 men riding the tractor and caused injuries to 18-year-old Brian Hammond that would later prove fatal. In addition, around 50 other people were injured by the blast. The majority of the injuries included 2nd and 3rd degree burns, along with injury from flying shrapnel. Among those who were injured severely were officers Conwell and Sawyer, who each suffered burns on up to 30% of their bodies. Conwell's wife, Dawn Conwell, told reporters that there was a very clear outline to her husband's injuries that showed he had been partially protected by his body armor. Other injured people were flown by helicopter to hospitals as far away as Cleveland. Many of Cliff's remaining family members were among those injured in the blast. Despite some expressions of shock and dismay, the fairground management decided to continue with the fair, just 24 hours after the explosion, as a way to, in their words, honor those who had died while supporting the fair. An investigation was launched by multiple police agencies from the states of Ohio and Minnesota. They brought in specialists on steam boilers and steam tractors for expert analysis. Upon close examination of the wreckage, the investigators discovered the crown sheet, a metal sheet that sits at the top of the firebox in between the flames and the water, had been rapidly pushed downwards. The sheet itself was heavily corroded from so many years of use and improper maintenance. The original thickness of the crown plate, when manufactured, was 9.55 millimeters, or 3/8 of an inch, but over time the plate had been worn away to as little as 2.2 millimeters, or 0.087 inches in places. In addition to this, 6 stay bolts connected to the crown plate were found to be welded. These welds were noted to be very porous, something which compromised the effectiveness and security of the bolts. Further, fail-safe features known as fuse plugs, plugs designed to melt in an emergency and release pressure, were found to have been welded around their entire circumference, preventing them from effectively functioning as emergency release valves. A safety relief valve was also found to be malfunctioning. Without it, there was no way to relieve excess internal pressure in the boiler. This valve should have opened automatically at a pressure of 125 psi. But during testing by investigators, the valve did not open even at twice that pressure. Investigators found sand in the valve that prevented it from opening, and speculated that the sand had been introduced during sandblasting as part of restoration work. Finally, the pressure gauge was defective. It displayed a pressure reading of 25 psi at all times. Cliff Kovacic was aware of this before the disaster, and it is not clear why he did not have this vital instrument repaired or replaced. Using this information, along with eyewitness accounts, the investigators determined the full cause of the steam explosion. Before the drive to the fair even began, the steam tractor was, despite the restoration, in poor condition given the overall deterioration of the metal for the crown plate. This was exacerbated when the tractor was driven to the fair instead of being transported on a trailer. By the time the tractor reached the fairgrounds and had briefly stopped for the police officers, the water levels were dangerously low, and the crown sheet had become partially exposed. As a result, while the fire kept burning, the crown sheet was getting hotter and hotter due to not being covered in water. When the tractor started moving into its parking spot after the officers had issued their ticket, the sudden movement likely caused some of the remaining water to be splashed onto the exposed and overheated crown plate. This water flashed instantly into more steam than the weakened machine could handle. With a jammed release valve and fuse plugs failing to melt, the pressure inside the tractor forced the crown plate to bow downward and tear into the firebox. This resulted in a rapid explosion that blasted metal, hot ash and steam in all directions, and launched the tractor itself into the air. Death was almost instantaneous for most of the victims. One investigator from Minnesota remarked that if the tractor had been inspected in his state, it would have been legally barred from operating until repairs were made. In the wake of the disaster and subsequent investigation, Ohio's state government, along with others, put forward new legislation that enforced proper maintenance and oversight on all steam engines in the state to ensure that the mistakes made by Cliff and his friends would never be repeated. 20 years after the disaster, the community worked together to install a permanent memorial at the site where the explosion took place. The Medina County Fair continues to this day, a beloved part of a community that was devastated by an explosion that took place there in 2001.